Today is the Monday before Thanksgiving, and at this time of the year, you think about those people closest to your heart, your family and friends, those who you'll likely be seeing in the next few days, and those people who you won't and perhaps haven't seen in years. Yesterday, I was thinking about an old friend of mine from high school, Mark. We called him Ski Bone in high school. I always admired Ski because he was a creative. I don't know whether I'd say he's an artist. I think I read online recently that his son is a pretty talented artist. But Ski Bone was more of an artist in who he was, in his expression of himself. He was very much authentically Ski Bone. I remember, when you have your room when you're in high school, when you're a kid, it's largely made up of whatever furniture your parents buy you. But Ski Bone had made his space a sanctuary. He had got these two marble planters from somewhere and found this busted piece of marble that he put on top to make a coffee table, and then these big pillows to kind of turn his bed into a sofa. And then he had strung Christmas lights and plants. And his room felt like a sanctuary in what can otherwise be a inhospitable place when you're a rowdy teenager living with mom and dad. At one point, Ski Bone's dad had a little business doing like maintenance and janitorial work. At one point, Ski Bone's dad had the contract to clean the local medical building, and he outsourced the work to Mark and I, to me and Mark. And Ski Bone went around to every office and checked the drawers until he finally found the key that opened the medicine room. It was like a little walk-in closet that had hundreds of meds in there, and we would go in there with the physician's desk reference and look to see if we could find any meds that would be of any use to us. I don't remember ever finding anything, but Ski had these pills one time, I forget what they were, but he crushed them up with a mortar and pestle and sprinkled them on this terrible brown weed we had. And he swore it did something to him. I don't remember feeling anything, but one night we're in the medical building cleaning, and I'm in one of the offices vacuuming with this big industrial vacuum, this loud industrial vacuum. And despite its volume, I hear over top this loud crash. And so I go rushing into the office where it came from. And there's Ski Bone laid out, passed out on the floor. And right in the corner behind him is this big tank. I don't know what the gas is called that the dentists give you before they do whatever they do. This big tank of like laughing gas, and it was just stored there. It didn't have any apparatus connect to it. We weren't by a dentist's chair. It was just in the corner of this guy's office. And Ski Bone had gone and turned the nozzle on the top of the tank and taken a hit off and passed out onto the floor. I was scared to death. I didn't know what, he was out. But he came to, and in the end he was okay. When I was a kid, not just in high school, but probably even into my young adult life, I thought of human beings in a pretty binary way. They were the creatives, people like us who were living an authentic life, or the ghosts, the zombies who were walking through life, living according to someone else's script. And I think to a certain degree, I still see this presentation. I live in Washington, D.C., and if you live in any city where there's a metro, if you look at the people in the morning, they look like a bunch of zombies. 7 out of 10 workers are disengaged, and most people are going off to some place where they don't want to be to spend the next 8, 10, 12 hours. But I was working with a client not long ago. We partnered on a project, and we were doing some leadership coaching. And we were discussing our relative experience in this space, and they hadn't done a great deal of leadership coaching. And I wanted to communicate how much I had done in terms of counseling, coaching, consulting. And when I looked at the record, it turned out to be several hundreds of people and several thousand sessions that I've spent with, individuals, couples, families, small and large groups. And meeting these hundreds of people over the course of these last several decades, I recognize fully that this creative lives inside of every one of us. You know, people might look like zombies in the morning. They may well be living according to someone else's script, but they have that creative self inside of them. You know, every human being, while not everyone wants to be a crazy person like me and my friends were, every person wants to inject their authentic self, their creative self into their lives, especially into their work. And it's because they don't get this opportunity that it's a big part of the reason why so many people feel so disengaged. When I talk to managers, to leaders, CEOs, organizational leaders, about this, they say, yeah, I hear you. I'm dealing with disengagement. I would like to get to know people better and find out who they are and engage that creative self in the work. I spend all my time trying to get people, you know, to engage more. But I just don't have time for that. I just want people to come to work and do their jobs. And you know, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a leader. I absolutely understand that. But I just don't ever see it happening. You know, people are going to bring their creative self to work one way or the other. I said it before, and I'll say it probably many times into the future. You hire a customer service rep or an HR manager or a CFO, but you get, you know, Jack and Lisa and Alice, and they might have brought their customer service rep or CFO or HR manager to the job interview, but that's not who they're bringing to work. They're bringing themselves to work. And it really seems to me that either managers engage and find out who the workers are, find their strengths and engage those strengths, or you're gonna meet their weaknesses if you don't, and they're therefore disengaged. I mean, you're either going to engage in a preventative measure or a curative measure. Now, again, not everyone is going to be ski bone. Not everyone is going to be wild like we were wild, but a lot of people are, and all of us have that humanity inside of us. Everyone wants to be themselves. Everyone wants to be recognized, seen and heard for who they are. They want to know that they're of some value, and they want the opportunity to, as I say, inject their creative self into their work. There's a little bit of ski bone in everybody, in that we're messy, we're creators, we're human beings, we're animals. All of this is coming to work. So I can dig it. As an entrepreneur and a manager, I'd like for people just to come and be their professional self. I just don't ever see that happening. So either you engage and find their creative self and engage their strengths, or, as I say, you're probably gonna meet their weaknesses. I don't think there's any other choice, really. And the good news is Ski-Bone's a great guy. I mean, we were messy when we were young, but he's a good dude. He's a creative guy. You know, getting inside and getting to know someone takes some effort. But my experience meeting these many hundreds of people in an intimate setting, which is what a therapy, coaching, consulting session often becomes, because you get to know the people, is that people are largely good. They want to be good. They want to engage in their work. They want to give to their employer. But they need to be recognized, and they need the opportunity to be their authentic selves. That's the engaged worker, the authentic worker. And you're going to have to get in there and get messy and identify who that person is if you want that creative to engage creatively at work. There's no other option, I don't think. That's just the way that it is.